Well. Look who it is.
Hello.
I don't think I have another princess this early in the morning.
So.
Are you sitting in the IFR ground?
Yeah.
God damn, boy, you crazy. I barely got here at 7. Or I barely got here at 6:45. That's when I walked that door. I barely got out of bed at 6:40.
Oh, me too. But it wasn't my choice because my fiance wakes up early for work, so I figured I'd just leave.
Fine.
Morning.
Morning.
Naka will be in your class starting Thursday.
Is that who old
Old
Kentaya Tanani Lopez?
He'll be on in your class.
Hell yeah. Alright, I love Naka.
Starting Thursday though.
Okay, starting on Thursday. Hello, welcome.
Oh.
Hello. Welcome to IFR Ground.
Small group.
We got one more. We gotta wait.
Still bigger than mine.
The Hawaii boy, 2 minutes late. Mr. Kainalu. I'm surprised we have there's Kaimalu, there's Kainalu. I think there's another Kainalu.
There's so many Hawaiian Malu, Kanai.
Yeah.
Got Naka.
Is Naka Hawaiian?
I think he's part Hawaiian.
Oh.
I think.
I thought he was from Fresno.
That's the most degrading assumption to me.
Dude, I flew the multi up to we went up to Santa Rosa first, and then after Santa Rosa we went back down to
Oh nice.
we landed in Fresno. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. And it was still so friggin' hot in that plane. We're sitting there on the ground waiting to take off. And I'm like, it's night. It's pitch black out here. And it's
Like 89
still
degrees.
so hot. Like, this is.
I just went to Harris Ranch, so.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How was it?
It's fantastic.
Wait, Harris Ranch, is that okay. Harris Ranch is the barbecue, right? Okay. Because there's Halter Ranch is the winery.
I really want to go there.
Yeah.
My sister's a member, so
Really?
I think I got her to pay for the plan now. Flying up there. Now I get to go stay there for a week.
Take your fiance. One of these days I want to take my wife.
Yeah, but I think you have to be a member to fly in.
You have to be a member to fly in?
I think so.
Oh, I thought it was either you had to be a member or you had to commit to buying 6 bottles of wine.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll do that.
Yeah. I thought that don't quote me on that. I mean, obviously you could probably just call them and ask.
Yeah, I haven't called them, but that'd be really cool to do.
God forbid anyone in our generation calls someone. Am I right? Where's the AI assistant that I can talk to?
Google AI to tell me when I search on
Oh, brother, this guy's.
Yeah, it was nice. Went to did Harris Ranch for so long.
Nice.
And
Where'd you guys? Because Harris Ranch isn't far enough, right? So you had to go somewhere above that. Where?
yeah, it is.
It is?
It's over
So-
250 from here.
Is it over 250 from here? You gotta be shitting me. It's not, there's no way it's over 250. That's where I'm going for all my commercial loans now.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. It was so funny because I got here.
Okay, Nalu,
You know,
I need you to look at the time, boy. It's 7 o'clock. I think I remember you saying and agreeing that you'd be here 5 minutes early. Hey, it's all right this time, but in the future, I won't be so nice. All right? All right, partner? All right. Let's try to have a good day now.
still paying attention to this guy. He doesn't even work here. She's pretending.
Hey, stop telling people that. I do work here. If I wear this shirt long enough, they'll believe it.
Actually, full-time employed.
I'm actually like really important here. Stop.
Is there an iPad charger anywhere in here?
Seriously? You're like really like pissing.
Or
I should know.
yonder.
Mm. Mm. Look it up to Lucania Farmers Market. Not bad, it was good.
You ever gone to the one in Little Italy?
It's huge. I don't think we've been to that one.
It's huge.
Usually farmers markets, I'm like, there's not enough of an incentive. I feel like we need to go because my wife and I try not to like buy food anyway. It's like half the reason you go to a farmers market is for like the pop-up food and stuff. It's like not like we're getting produce.
So what
But I
happened
feel like we
last
just
time?
end up walking around and not doing anything. We're just at the farmers market because it's like cute over
Yeah. Did that? We ended up walking around with tamales. It's fucking awesome.
We went to this place. I think at the Lucadio one they have one that's like something called like it's all bananas or something.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's like a like Dole Whip but bananas.
They do that up where I used to live
Oh really?
at Port Anthony.
Hmm.
Because like 80% of their imports there are bananas.
Hmm. Oh yeah, because we I got one. She got one that was all bananas, that with like a chocolate topping. I got one that was like a banana pineapple mixture. You know, I thought it sounded good too. I think just bananas was better.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, I guess banana pineapple's a.
Chad, just stop distracting me. All about bananas. God. All right, let's get going here. Let's power through. We got a little bit to finish up from yesterday. Not too much. And then we can get into the stuff for today. So, any questions from anything yesterday? If you guys were studying ice flags, anything like that? Anything about any of the regions? Cool. So we're kind of, as a review, we were kind of talking about like the different methods of. First, we talked about the instrument scan, right? And I talked about the hub and spoke method, right? Which for me, the hub and spoke method means the attitude indicator is the hub, right? And then each of the instruments around it are the spokes, right? So you always come back to the attitude indicator. And you have to, when you first start out, when you guys are simming, force yourself to keep that scan happening, right? It doesn't matter if one thing is slightly off, you have to go back to the scan because that's the only way you can practice not getting fixated on any one instrument, right? Because fixation is what can put you in a bad spot. And it's happens to everyone, right? You fixate on your altitude, like on an approach, and you're like, oh shoot, I gotta maintain altitude. And so you're just staring at that altimeter and you don't realize you go full scale deflection on the approach, which full scale basically means you are too far either to the left or to the right of the approach and it's no longer safe. Right. So one of these methods, so now we're kind of talking about how we understand the instruments, and I think this is something that you'll hear pretty decently often is the primary and supporting method. So it says the second method for performing attitude instrument flight is a direct extension of the control power method. By utilizing the primary and supporting flight instruments in conjunction with control and power instruments, the pilot can precisely maintain aircraft attitude. This method utilizes the same instruments as the control power method. However, it focuses more on the instruments that depict the most accurate indication for the aspect of the aircraft attitude being controlled. Primary pitch altimeter, kind of weird. Primary bank heading indicator. Supporting pitch and bank is the attitude indicator. So the attitude indicator is actually supporting those. Supporting bank is the turn coordinator, my favorite. And supporting pitch is the VSI, right? So it's kind of weird because you think, why is the attitude indicator now the primary pitch? Why is attitude indicator not primary bank, right? Well, I think you can kind of think of it as like the attitude indicator is kind of doing it all in one versus the altimeter, right? When you level off, say you're going from the climb to the straight level, right? And that means that you're going to have to apply a certain amount of forward pressure. You're going to have to reduce the power a little bit, and you're maybe going to trim the plane out, right? Now, there's going to be a point where you keep applying the forward pressure that you see the altimeter needle stop, right? The altimeter needles, you're no longer going to be climbing. So you tried to level off at 4,500. So at around 4,450, you just started applying some of that forward pressure, and now you're no longer climbing, right? That's why it's your primary pitch instrument, because it's controlling basically how much pitch you're adding in, because you now are no longer climbing or descending, right? Primary bank heading indicator, if I think it's just saying, right, if your heading indicator is moving at all, right, that means you're banking somewhat. If your heading indicator isn't moving at all, you are wings level perfectly centered, right? Assuming that these instruments are working properly as well. Now supporting pitch and bank is the attitude indicator, because believe it or not, guys, the attitude indicator and the heading indicator of this whole instrument scan are the two least important instruments. Later on in your training, you're going to fail both the attitude indicator and the heading indicator, and you're going to navigate just using the airspeed, altitude, and then your turn coordinator and VSI. And it'll be really hard at first, and then you adjust your scan, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's actually really not that bad. So this chart right here, I would actually take a picture of this probably, because this is a useful, like for all of these things, they have your, like, what is your primary, what is your supporting, do I think you need to have this memorized? No. But sometimes I think on check rides they've had them ask like, okay, like what is your primary instrument for bank, and then what's supporting that banking information. So if you if you're familiar with this chart, questions like that shouldn't be an issue. So let's prove it. And again, I think the thing you guys just want to think about is that, like, for whatever you're trying to get the aircraft to do, so like if I level off, right, and I look at my altimeter, now the altimeter needle, I guess for you guys it's a gauge, but now the the gauge is locked in at 4,500, right? What do I expect my airspeed to do? Right, if we're straight and level flight, should my airspeed be going up or down? Or should it just be staying the same?
Should we try to maintain?
Yeah, the airspeed should be staying the same, right? If your airspeed, if you thought you were straight level, and then all of a sudden your airspeed started gradually increasing, then there's probably an issue here, right? If the altimeter isn't showing a descent, which would make that airspeed climb, what's going on here, right? That's an example of not really a scenario, just saying like these things should work together. The airspeed indicator and altimeter definitely work together a lot. Constant rate climbs. A constant rate climb is a climb in which the pilot maintains constant rate on the vertical speed indicator to a desired cruising altitude. Should be noted that pilots should not let their airspeed decay to stall or near stall speeds when performing the constant rate climbs. If the aircraft cannot maintain a constant rate and safe airspeed simultaneously, the angle of attack should be decreased to help increase the aircraft's airspeed to safe levels. Additional power application may also serve to help increase speed when airspeed when necessary. I mean, constant rate climbs, pretty simple, guys. Even though we're talking about the scan and stuff, your fundamentals from private training, the pitch, power, trim, haven't changed, right? We first set the pitch on the altitude indicator, right? If you're climbing, we just pull the stick back a little bit, we set the pitch, we set our power, we always climb at full power, and then we trim, right? So what's our VY in this thing? Those of us who are new to this thing.
72.
It's 72, right? Sometimes we can't maintain a nice climb at 72. So it's okay if you set the plane up at 75 or even 80 knots sometimes. As long as you're getting a constant rate on the VSI, that's something that's consistent, right? Constant rate climbs are important, but probably more important for later on when you guys start. What's this other slide? Maintenance for the pilot use, blah blah blah, vertical speed indicator. Pilot slows below the target ratio and the climb must increase the aircraft's pitch altitude, most likely probably increase the climb rate. If climb rate increases. Yeah, so obviously if you're looking for constant rate climbs, the VSI is the thing that you look at, right? But there's not many times in IFR flying where I think you're told to maintain, like ATC hasn't ever told me like maintain at least a 500 foot per minute climb to this altitude or something. Sometimes they'll say expedite your climb because they want you to climb a little bit quicker. And then I remind them I'm a sling and I can't climb very fast, but I do my best. But usually ATC won't throw numbers at you that say like at least 500 feet per minute or 300 feet per minute or whatever. Does anyone know what our minimum IFR climb rate is? Like the minimum climb rate we have to maintain to be able to fly IFR.
200 per nautical mile.
200 feet per nautical mile, which we'll talk about this later, but 200 feet per nautical mile roughly translates to about 250 feet per minute, right? So if you're ever in a position where you are unable to maintain 250 feet per minute climb, that's something that you'd want to advise ATC and say, hey guys, just so you know, current conditions or whatever, maybe you have partial power, you're going full power and you're not able to actually maintain that 250 feet per minute climb, you'd want to advise ATC. Because if they tell you to climb and you're not actually able to climb up to that altitude and they have other traffic that they're routing you around, right? They don't want you climbing into people.
What reg is that?
Oh gosh. Chad, do you know what it is off the top here?
No, I'll look on my notes.
Bruh. I don't know what the reg is. It's probably 91,177. It's mountainous area, not mountainous area.
Does it fall under like the takeoff minimums? Or minimums you need? Crossing departure on runway 35 feet HAL, no turns under 400 feet HAL, and then
Yeah, I think that
200
is.
feet per nautical mile.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'll also look for where the actual like reg is, but I mean. We do know where it is, because maybe it's not a reg, it might be in like the terps or something. I'll find that.
Cause I have one, 91. 77,
Mm-hmm.
but also this is a year old barring, so.
Well, I mean, that rule hasn't changed or anything, so I would assume it would be the same rule. But it doesn't say 200 feet per nautical mile on there.
No, I don't see that.
I'll see if I can find what that actually is. But so that you guys know now, the minimum IFR climb rate is 200 feet per nautical mile, which if you're unable to make 200 feet per nautical mile, that's something that you have to advise ATC of. And 200 feet per nautical mile roughly translates to 250 feet per minute, which is something that we read on the PSI. But it's actually based in ground speed. But we'll talk about that soon. Okay, so constant rate descent. Constant rate descent is in which the pilot maintains a constant rate on the vertical speed indicator to a lower desired altitude. The main instrument the pilot will use to accomplish a constant rate descent is the vertical speed indicator. Let's assume we would like to accomplish a constant rate descent at 500 feet per minute. If a pilot decreases their target rate during the descent, they must lower the aircraft's pitch altitude to increase the descent rate. Pilot increases above the target rate during the descent, they must increase the aircraft's pitch altitude and decrease the descent rate. So, I mean, let's think about this logically. So, if you're getting set up for a constant rate descent, right, it's just pitch power trim again, right? So, remember, we have to actually pitch for a descent, so we lower the nose slightly below the artificial horizon on the altitude indicator, right? We reduce the power to a power setting that is, suitable for landing, and then we trim the plane out, right? So you always want to be able to feel like, okay, can I trim the plane out? I always tell my students, take your hands off the stick, right? If you're trying to do a constant climb or constant descent, after you trim the plane, take your hands off the stick and see if the plane holds what you just told it to do, right? Because you spend so much effort trying to control the plane without even realizing it. So if you just take your hands off the stick and the plane's holding a 90 knot descent rate at 500 feet per minute, you're golden, right? Constant rate descents are really useful for when you guys start flying precision approaches. So a precision approach is basically something where you're flying to the approach, right? Or like something like an ILS, where you have a localizer that's giving you lateral information. So it's basically like a straight line that you are, the localizer can tell you if you're either to the left or right of that line. And then you also have vertical guidance, which is a glide slope, which is telling you, okay, I can tell you how far above or below that line you are. So you're flying two needles that kind of look like a cross like this. And if you keep them perfectly centered, it takes you down the runway. And with most ILSs are set up that if you hold a 500 foot per minute descent rate at 90 knots, you should never really even have to worry about your glide slope because you basically descend with the glide slope. So it's really, really, really nice. Once we talk about it a little bit more, that'll make a little bit more sense. But being able to set the airplane up and just kind of let it fly itself is really nice. What?
If you were to trim the plane to your attitude indicator to that first bottom tick mark, would that give you a 500-foot per minute descent?
Not necessarily. It would depend on your. I mean, it would depend on your power set.
Okay.
And it could, right? But if the power was less, you'd probably be descending quicker. If the power was more, you wouldn't be descending as quick.
Okay.
So maybe you probably could trim it out to give you a 500 foot per minute descent rate. You just have to find the right power setting.
Okay.
It just won't always give it to you. Okay, so this is kind of like your pitch power trim climbing. Set the attitude, we set the power, we check our airspeed, and we adjust the pitch as needed. For descent, set the attitude, which it's got it right on that first tick mark, like you said. Set power, check airspeed, and adjust it. Right. And I think trim should be in there as well, because after you adjust that pitch, you don't want to be holding that pitch. Trim it out so the plane flights itself. They're going to get very good at trimming an airplane after instrument rating.
I didn't find the right, but it's in the aim.
It is in the aim.
5-2-9.
Okay, that's good. So
Departure procedures.
write that down. 5-2-9.
I
That's
later
the
define that.
We think
Okay, nice. I don't know how much I can talk about constant airspeed. On the sense here. Okay, so how do we change our airspeed in straight level flight? So if I'm trying to maintain straight level, how do I speed up? How do I slow down? What can I change? Of my pitch, power, or trim.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
If I'm in straight level flight, right, and I'm going 90 knots, and I want to go 100 knots, how do I speed up? And I want to maintain straight level. I don't want to climb or descend. That's the only thing I can do.
Power.
Right, and just increase power, right? Now if I need to slow down and I want to maintain straight level, right, I reduce the power. So when I increase power, what's the plane going to want to do?
Climb.
It's going to want to climb, which means I'm going to have to apply what to stop it from climbing?
Trim.
Forward pressure, right? And then as I apply that forward pressure, once I am applying a constant amount of pressure where I can see, okay, the plane is still straight and level, then I trim it out, trim all that pressure out, so now the airplane is perfectly trimmed, right? So that's just in straight level, but it's the same thing for descents or climbs, right? Usually descents. If you want to descend at a slower airspeed, right? So you reduce your power, you pitch down, you reduce the power a little bit, you trim it out, and you see, okay, we're descending, but we're descending at 100 knots right now, and I want to descend at 90. How do you descend at 90 knots instead of 100? What change would you make there? Well, reduce the airspeed, sure, but how do I reduce the airspeed? Like I'm descending at 100 knots right now, but your instructor says, hey, I want you to descend at 90. What are you going to do? Like, what can you change?
The pitch.
Sure, but if I just change pitch, right, my airspeed's going to fall a little bit, but then I'm not going to be descending quite as quickly.
So then power.
Right. So that's why I relate it back to the straight level flight thing, because it's the same concept. If you're descending too quickly, the only thing you can do is just reduce your power a little bit more. So let's think about what happens here, right? If I reduce my power a little bit more, the airplane nose is going to want to fall a little more, right? So I'm going to have to increase the back pressure to stop the airplane nose from falling, which by increasing back pressure, my airspeed begins to fall. And then I trim it out, and now I'm descending at 90 knots instead of 100 knots, right? So thinking about these things and like, okay, if I do this, it's going to affect it this way, it's going to affect it this way, whatever. You know, like the knee bone connected to the thigh bone, connected to that kind of thing. But that's really important with flying instrument approaches. Because you'll get asked that a lot, like, hey, you're flying this approach too fast. You need to slow down. Okay, how do I slow down? It's just reduce power, pitch back a little bit more and retrim, right? And you'll still probably be holding that 500 foot per minute descent rate or whatever it is. Okay, this is everything we've been talking about. Okay, cool. So turns to headings. Turn is initiated by banking the wings in the desired direction of the turn through the pilot's use of aileron flight controls. In order to remain level, maintain altitude when performing a turn, pilot must utilize the elevator to compensate for a decrease in vertical lift. If this is not done, the airplane will descend, lose altitude. The pilot uses rudder input to offset any adverse yaw and keep the airplane coordinated throughout the turn. The rudder does not turn the airplane and is used to maintain coordinated flight, right? So we all understand how to turn an airplane. If just because you can't see outside, it's still the same thing, right? You're going to apply a little bit of bank, right? Maybe a little bit of back pressure. And then as you're applying that bank, right, we're also adding just a little bit of rudder during the entry. Do we have to hold rudder in during turns? Like when you're turning, do you have to maintain a constant rudder pressure? Not necessarily. It's not like a, okay, I'm turning left, so I'm applying. It's not like a one-to-one relationship where the more left aileron I apply, the more left rudder I also need to apply, or something like that, right? Because all your rudder really does is correct for the adverse yaw that happens when you roll into a turn. So what happens when, if you roll into a turn, so I got my airplane right here. I start rolling into a turn. I roll this way, and I don't use any rudder. What's the nose going to do? Fall.
Can you go that way?
Right. That's what I'm looking for. It's going to, your adverse yaw is going to pull the nose the opposite direction. Right? So really, the only reason we really have a rudder is to correct for that, and besides being coordinated and stuff, is to correct for that tendency of the nose to swing over to the right. So I roll into the turn, I give myself a little bit of rudder in the direction of the turn, and once I'm stabilized, right, I don't necessarily need to hold that rudder anymore. I can just look at my turn coordinator and say like, okay, what do I need to put in here to maintain coordination? Because in a steep turn, it could even maybe be a little bit of right rudder, because of the aerodynamic forces that are happening here. But turns are still the same, right? If you're turning to a heading in your IFR, still anticipate a little bit of back pressure. But one thing I will say though is that whenever we turn under IFR, it will always pretty much always be standard rate, right? Unless someone specifically tells you to turn at half standard rate, you'll probably only be turning at standard, which is about 15-ish degrees, right? And that's intentional, right? Because if you bank all the way to 30 and things start happening really, really quickly, suddenly you can't get your instrument scan, like you're like, whoa, things are kind of getting out of control. If you bank at standard rate, right, things happen slow enough that you can keep track of everything happening at once, right? So pretty much always default to standard rate. The same thing in the holds, like when you guys start practicing holds and arcs. Did either of you guys have a sim yesterday?
Yeah.
You did. You're gonna learn how to fly holds and all that stuff. Every turn you always make in a hold is always standard rate. ATC also knows how long a standard rate turn takes. How long does a standard rate turn take? A 360-degree turn take at standard rate?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, right? So ATC knows that. So if ATC is giving you they tell you to make a 180 to a certain heading, they know it's going to take a minute, so you don't have to feel like, oh, I need to bank more to really get to that heading, unless for whatever reason it's like, hey, I need you to expedite your heading change or something. So they don't tell you that. bank angles. So shallow turn is 20 degrees or less. Medium is 20 to 45. Steep bank turns are 45 degrees or more. Does anyone know what a shallow turn would be characterized by? Like if we're only in a shallow turn and I let go of the stick, what should the plane do automatically? I roll it at 20 degrees of bank or maybe 15 degrees of bank and I let go of the stick. What's the plane gonna want to do? Right, in a shallow turn, the planes are designed to be stable, right? Inherently stable. So if it's just a shallow turn and I let go of the stick, the plane's gonna want to come back to stream level, right? Medium bank turn is the point, okay, at around 20 to 45 is a little extreme, but 20 to 45 degrees, theoretically, you could let go of the stick right here and the plane would just maintain that turn without you having to do anything. And then steep turns, anything above that 45, we have an overbanking tendency. If I let go of the stick and I'm not holding it anymore, the plane won't want to do this, right? I think you guys know what the horizontal lift component is. It's what's responsible for making us turn, right? So when we turn, we split. When we're straight and level, all the lift that's being created by the wings is going straight up, right? As I begin to turn, that lift is still pointing straight up from the wing, right? And most of it is still going upwards, right? But a portion of it is now pointing in the direction we're turning in, right? And the portion that's pointing in the direction we're turning is that horizontal component of lift, which is responsible for making us turn. Does that make sense? That's a review of just basic aerodynamics, right? That we should have covered in private. But basically, how do we get more of so you're rolling to a steep turn, right? What are you going to have to do to maintain altitude in the steep turn? If you power, yes, power helps.
Back pressure.
It's back pressure because we're pulling back on the stick, which is increasing the angle of attack, right? We increase the angle of attack, which increases the amount of lift we're producing, right? And power in steep turns is helping prevent us from getting too slow, right? Because if we didn't add any power in and I'm just increasing the angle of attack as I'm rolling into the turn, my airspeed is going to start dropping, right? So, but it does help. Like it helps with maintaining altitude as well. Maintaining altitude. Okay, kind of just talked about this, right? When you're turning, you have to increase the back pressure. If you're getting too slow while you're turning, increase the power a little bit. Coordinated turns. It's just like, yeah, so many slides on this stuff, guys. We know how to step on the ball. So does everyone know the difference between a slipping and a skidding turn? If you're slipping or skidding, and like what the ball would look like. I have a way that I kind of like memorize it, which I think kind of makes sense. So I kind of like saying that the ball on the inclinometer, right, is a visualization of what our tail is doing. Okay, so if I'm over here, because you'll get this question on your written test, I'm pretty sure. So these are two. That's two guys right here. Right, that's the middle thing. And let's say for this one, the ball's right here. For this one, the ball's right here. Right, so this guy, the ball's deflected a little bit to the left. This guy, the ball's deflected a little bit to the right. Okay. So now let's say that I'm we're viewing the airplane from behind here. This is the body of the airplane, those are the wings, right? So I'm in a left banking turn. And as I'm in that turn, right, the ball is kind of swung slightly up to the left. Is that a slipping or a skidding turn?
That's a slipping.
Okay, it is a slipping turn.
Wait, the plane is turning left right now?
Plane's turning left right now, right? And the ball is kind of swung out to the left. Is that slipping or skid?
and it is slipping. But you'll get these questions on the written test, and it's kind of like, oh shoot, I don't know. Like, what's a way of thinking about it or figuring it out? Well, like I said, the ball is a visualization of what the tail is doing, right? So same kind of scenario here, right? If I'm banking to the left like this, right, and the ball is kind of moved over to the left a little bit, think of the tail as kind of moving to the left like that. Okay. Now, if I stepped on the ball, right, and gave myself a little bit more left rudder pressure, that would deflect the rudder like that, which would push it back to just a normal center position, right, for coordinated flight, right? But now is it like, okay, wait, is it slipping or skidding? How do I remember that? So if you think of the airplane as we're turning here as kind of being on a track, like say like a roller coaster or something, like a roller coaster track. And you say, okay, the ball is a visualization of the tail. If it's a slipping turn, the tail will be slipping down off the track, right? It's slipping down into the direction of the turn because it's not holding it, right? I think it is on the track, and the tail is slipping down that way in the direction of whatever the ball's doing. Now, opposite here, right? Say we're still in that left-hand bank, right? If this is a slip, this must be a skid, right? So we're going this way, except now my tail is too far deflected over to the right. I'm trying to make sure I get like a good angle for you guys. If it's deflected too far to the right, imagine you're on a roller coaster and there's a wall right here on this side of the roller coaster. That tail is going too far to the right and it's skidding against that wall. It's like my own like personal way of remembering that, right? So if you're turning that way, ball's deflected to the left, it'd be a slipping turn because the tail is falling into the turn. If you're turning left and the ball's coming out and it's coming outside the turn, it's skidding, and it's skidding against that imaginary wall that we're turning against, maybe. Does that kind of make sense? So if I'm turning to the, let's actually you guys this. If I'm turning to the right and the ball is currently deflected to the right, am I slipping or skidding? Slipping, right? So I'm turning to the right and the ball's deflected to the left. What am I doing?
Skidding.
I'm turning to the left and the ball's deflected to the right.
Turning to the left, balls to the right, skidding.
Skidding, right? So another way you can think about it too is like, do they agree or do they not agree? Right? Does the ball agree with the direction I'm turning? If it agrees to the direction you're turning, meaning it's too far to the left, you're slipping. If it's swung out to the right, right, then you're skidding. Yes. We're on day 2. Oh yeah. Warm up. Your instruments say you're straight level, but your body is screaming at you that you're in a left-hand turn. You start to put in some right aileron to counteract the feeling of the left turn. What's happening here and what can happen very soon? How can you fix it? Community building. What's your favorite airport that you've flown to? Okay, so in the scenario, what is this pilot probably experiencing? What is the name of that feeling?
I don't know, leans or is that inversion? It's the leans, right?
I think it is the leans.
Okay.
I'm leaning towards the leans here. Andrew, what's your favorite airport that you've flown into?
Probably slow, just because of the FBO.
Oh,
Free ice cream.
Slow is the best. I love that airport.
Apparently those wine bottles, you used to be able to get them for free.
That's so people told me that,
Yeah.
and they got rid of it.
Yup.
I'm like, because they have too many drunk ATP students probably flying in there. They're like, all right, I'll take this bottle of wine.
They just give out bottles of wine.
They used to.
Yeah, apparently they used to.
That's ridiculous.
Insane.
They have like a whole wall of just wine, and they're empty now. So they don't fill them up anymore, or they don't keep them stocked. But
I just like, I always wonder with like FBOs or whatever, like if they serve alcohol, like if they see
like if like a pilot who just flew in is like very clearly like drinking wine or whatever, like on one of their couches, do they have the right to be like, I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you go out to the plane?
I would think so.
Because I'm like, but then like, would they? Because then they're like,
They were also giving out free bottles of wine there.
I just like it seems like a conflict of interest, but that's one thing, guys. If you ever fly to, if you can, fly to Sedona, and go to the cafe there. Oh gosh, so good, and they have the coolest looking bar that I couldn't go to, which I was pissed about, but it's awesome. I love Sedona. Yeah, when you guys do your long cross country, because for IFR, just you guys know the how long your cross country has to be for IFR for the instrument rating. It's
Is it 4 hours?
it's 250 nautical miles.
Oh.
So it's a distance requirement, and then in that 250 nautical miles, you have to fly 3 approaches into 3 different airports. You don't have to land at those airports, you just need to fly the approaches into them. A lot of times people will pair it up with your commercial cross country, which is there's a requirement for 300 nautical miles. So you'll fly basically like 250 nautical miles out and then make a route that's at least 300 nautical miles back. And so what I did with my students was we flew all the way out to Sedona and did 3 approaches on the way there. And then from Sedona went up to the Grand Canyon and then overflew the Grand Canyon, which was really cool. And then came back to Gillespie, and that was over 300. So if you're able to do that, because it's cool enough, because it has to be cool enough, really, really, really cool trip. I highly recommend it. And it's one of the benefits of Sling that you can actually like go to those airports, because at ATP, I trained at ATP, they have say it. At ATP they only allow you to go to very select airports, and they tell you where to go, and you have no freedom of choosing. But at Sling you can go wherever you want. It's really nice. Yeah, it does suck. I mean, I get why they do it because it standardizes everything, but it also is like my 300. I had to go to Fresno and Bakersfield, and then
See, I was still suffering in the heat, but at least I was eating some good barbecue.
true. Yeah. They would no way they'd let us land at Harris Ranch. We landed there in the Duchess too.
Did you really?
Yeah, that was. The
mean, it's
Duchess
like
actually has pretty good landing performance.
It's like a 3,300-foot runway.
Yeah, but it was, dude, it's so skinny though.
It's very scary.
I don't think it's 3,300 feet. I think it's shorter than that.
You sure? I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure it's 3,000.
Maybe it just felt like it was 1,800 feet long.
It's a skinny tunnel. It's like
Yeah, it's like nothing. Oh, great. Pitot static system. Something I can do.
it's 2,800.
All right, let's. I'm just gonna teach you.
30 feet one.
Did you guys learn the pitot static system for private? Probably. I mean, you guys flew. I love that everyone in here flew Cessnas, or most of you guys flew Cessnas, because I flew Cessnas, so it makes sense to me. So let's talk about and relearn the pitot static system. Hey, Chad. Seriously, man? I'm trying to teach up here. No disrespect.
Just teaching runways.
Whatever.
Drop that.
I saw them. Okay.
Just making sure.
Okay, let's draw this out a little bit here. So for instrument, pitot-static errors are, I mean, you learned them in private probably, but they're just as important in instrument. If anything, they're more important, right? Because you're going to be getting a rating that allows you to fly in conditions which may affect the pitot-static instruments, right? So we have airspeed indicator up here. We have our altimeter right here. And we have the VSI right here.
This is our pitot tube. And then we have this is our static port, which in the sling is actually not on the outside of the aircraft, it's on the inside. So you can't actually see your static port in the sling. And I'm just going to call this our alternate static port because you might fly an aircraft one day that also has an alternate static port. All right, cool. We have a drain hole there, the entrance right there. That's basically it. Okay. Does anyone remember how an airspeed indicator works? Please help me. What does an airspeed indicator have? A diaphragm or an aneroid wafer? Oh shit! Here we go again. It is. Drum roll, please. A diaphragm. But I think the diagrams are confusing because they all look like aneroid wafers. Like if you look at all of them, it's like this is not an aneroid wafer, it's a diaphragm. It's like, why does it look exactly the same thing? But so ASI has a diaphragm, right? So, and this is traditional instrumentation, right? It's not our fancy schmancy AHRs and the not ADIS.
ADC.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Air data Air defense identification zone. So ASI, right? We have a diaphragm. I just draw it like that. And the diaphragm is kind of like a balloon, right? Air goes into it, it's going to blow up the diaphragm. Air comes out of it, the diaphragm will contract, right? So that air that's going to blow the diaphragm up is coming from our pitot tube, right? What do we call the air that enters the pitot tube? What's the name for that?
Ram air.
Ram air, correct. So we have ram air entering the pitot tube, okay? And so that ram air comes to the pitot tube, it flows into the diaphragm, and it's going to blow that diaphragm up, right? Now, we know that the ASI uses two different types of air, though, right? We use ram air and what air? Say the name. Static, yes, static air, right? So the static air does not go inside the diaphragm, it goes inside the casing, right? So you can see there's air inside the casing right there, okay? So I like to call static air my reference air, okay? That's my way of thinking about it because it references the density of the air around me, okay? So whether I'm flying at 7,000 feet or I'm flying at 1,000 feet, the static air references the air around me and corrects the ASI to make sure that it's giving us the proper reading, the proper airspeed, right? So let's think about this logically. At 7,000 feet, is the air going to be as dense as it is at 1,000 feet? No, it's going to be less dense, right? So if I'm flying through the air at 7,000 feet, the amount of ram air pressure I'm getting, will it be more or less if the air isn't as dense?
Less.
It'll be less, right? So the airspeed indicator, let's say we didn't have our static air, right? The airspeed indicator would read that as, oh, there's less air coming into the pitot tube, I must just not be going as fast. But because we have that static air, right? That static air says, whoa, 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 wait up. No, that's actually right. Even though there's less air entering here, there's also less static air, meaning we are still going 50 knots. What's actually happening here, right, is that the ram air pressure goes to the diaphragm, causing it to expand, right? Well, if there's a bunch of static air right here, say because we're at a low altitude, it prevents it from expanding too much, right? It only expands a certain amount because of the resistance that's being offered by the static air. Now, if we are at a high altitude, right, there's less air entering the diaphragm, sure, so it's not going to be able to expand as much, but now there's also less resistance to the diaphragm expanding. So because there's less resistance, it allows the diaphragm to expand to just as much as it would at a lower altitude to indicate the same airspeed. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, I think like, just like, it's referencing the air around me. It's the resistance to the diaphragm expanding, right? And it allows it to expand the same amount, whatever altitude you're at, to indicate the proper airspeed. I kid you not. If you ever asked how the diaphragm is connected to the actual airspeed indicator, like the instruments, the answer is it's connected via mechanical linkages. That's what the answer is. Because sometimes DPs try and get you on that. They say like, "Oh, how's the diaphragm connected to the airspeed indicator? Like, what causes the thing?" It's like, "Oh, sir, it's connected via mechanical linkages." And they say, "Oh, very good," because that's exactly what the PHAC says. So that's how the airspeed indicator works, right? So it's both ram air pressure and static air pressure working together. And what do we call that when we have both ram and static? Ram plus static equals dynamic.
Oh.
Dynamic air pressure. Right. So ram, that's a good one to know. Ram plus static equals dynamic. What does dynamic mean? It's the word dynamic. It means changing. Right. So dynamic air pressure is pressure that's always changing, which makes sense for this, right? Because it's always changing based on what altitude we're at, the pressure. Cool. All right. Airspeed indicator. Altimeter, right? Does an altimeter have a diaphragm or an aneroid wafer? It does have an aneroid wafer, right? So the only one here, I'll save you guys the trouble. The only one here that has an aneroid wafer is the altimeter. Okay, it's the only one that has the wafer. It's a little vanilla wafer.
So I think a very.
Probably tastes great.
Yeah, you ever just eat an aneroid wafer? Get hungry?
real pilots eat aneroid wafer. What's a time check right now? How are we doing with time?
72.
It's 2. Okay, we'll talk about the altimeter and then I'll let you guys go on a break. Okay, cool. So the altimeter, does this use ram air pressure?
No.
Thank you. No, it does not use any ram air pressure. It's only static air, right? And that static air, does it go into the wafer or does it go into the casing? It goes into the casing. Yes, good. So we've got static air in the casing, right? And then we have this aneroid wafer here, which is sealed to a constant pressure that does not change. What is that pressure that it's sealed to?
2992.
2992. When I change my altimeter setting, does that change the pressure that the aneroid wafer is made? What am I trying to say? It says,
That's sealed to?
yeah. Does it change what it's sealed to when I change my altimeter setting?
No.
No, it doesn't. On a traditional 6-pack, when you move the altimeter setting in the Colesman window, right? Because that's what the little window is called, right? All you're doing is moving the needles on the dial. But you are not changing the sealed pressure of the aneroid wafer. It's always at 2992, right? So, this aneroid wafer, right, is naturally springy, okay? So if I have a, what would happen, like, okay, let's say I blew up a balloon a little bit and I put it on my passenger seat. I'm at 1,000 feet and I climb all the way up to 7,000 feet. What's the balloon going to do? It's going to expand, right? Why does it expand? Can anyone describe why the balloon expands when I climb?
The difference in pressure.
Yes, the difference in pressure, right? So there's a sealed amount of pressure in that balloon, right? And that pressure that's inside the balloon is always trying to escape, but it can't because the balloon holds it in, right?
Yeah.
Now, the density of the air as we climb, right, the air becomes less and less dense, meaning there's less resistance to that balloon expanding, okay? The balloon's naturally stretchy, so that air that's trying to escape that's trapped inside the balloon, we climb, less dense air, it's it's able to try and escape and stretch that balloon more and more and more and more. Right? That's the exact same thing that's happened with our altimeter, right? With our anode wafer. It's naturally springing, it's sealed to that constant internal pressure. We climb, we climb, we climb, it begins to expand, begins to expand, begins to expand. And that is connected to the dial via the mechanical linkages, which would indicate the climb, right? Now I descend into more dense air. It's going to contract the anode wafer, right? Apply more pressure to it, which allows it to, which that as it contracts, the dial moves down, and now we're descending. Does that make sense? Pretty simple, right? Cool. Let's take a little bit of a breaky. How about that? Guys, go get some coffee, get some water, splash on your face.
All right, okay.
You know,
All right,
wake up a little bit.
know that.
Jalabian? I'll show you a Jalabian. Ah.
You doing multi-mic?
Huh?
How you doing, Mike?
Barely connecting us. Yeah,
I didn't say.
thank you for not saying.
I've talked enough. I used to go to, I was at ACP. I don't need anyone calling me anything else.
It's like so many. If you need more notes, I took so many notes in my IFR ground.
That I have, I'll take that notebook at home.
Huh? Yeah. I'm just here bumming around, listening to multi-mic. Struggle.
Question. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's my
I'm
marker.
I made my coffee a little bit too strong. Kind of tastes a little bit. You know how for 61109, well, it's all 611. The 3 hours of flight training within the previous 2 calendar months,
Mhm.
does that have to be done with me? Because my student did it with somebody else, but not with me, but I gave him reimbursement.
I don't think it has to be done with you. I think they just have to have logged training.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're the primary CFI endorsing them, like as long as you've seen them do all this stuff and you
Yeah.
feel confident endorsing, then that's fine as well. Yeah, I think you're good.
Thank you. That's what I was waiting to hear. As your student.
You're my student. You're doing a great, Chad. You really are. You're just kidding. Expose your balls. Morning.
Morning.
I don't want to hear from you.
Clearly not.
Walks in, talks shit about her own student, doesn't elaborate, leaves.
That's a sling. Sling Valley Academy.
That's
That's
the
the sling when don't know what magnetic dip is?
Mhm.
With the magnetic compass?
Uh-huh.
Because some people say it's the magnetic compass, but I think it's the dip I bring to the Super Bowl party. Because it's absolutely magnetic and everyone wants some. Know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Know what I'm saying?
I don't need that. It's been the last 3 months. It's just.
I hope you
walk
know
in,
every
I
single
see-
time. I know that joke is dumb, and I make it every single time we talk about magnetic dip because I think
It's a
it's
great
so
joke.
funny. It's
hilarious.
like this dip, absolutely magnetic.
All right, but what's the recipe?
It's actually just like an onion dip. You know, it's just like you just cut the onions up, you throw them in a pan, you kind of caramelize them up a little bit. You know,
Speaking of dips, you go to Trader Joe's, right?
I go to Trader Joe's.
Okay. I went there yesterday.
In Liberty Station, right? Good one, one.
Actually, we got lazy. There you go. But you ever had Trader Joe's buffalo chicken dip?
Of course.
It's so fucking good.
I think I've had too much of it to the point where I've started getting sick of it.
It's impossible for me. That thing stuff is just so addicting.
It is really good though.
It's good. It's very good. I guess make
Uh,
a sandwich of that stuff.
My wife and I get the. It's funny, the tzatziki, the regular tzatziki is not as good as the vegan tzatziki.
Seriously?
Yeah, the vegan one's like so much better. It tastes like more. I don't know. I feel like it's like a little bit thinner, which I kind of like. I don't like it to be super thick.
Mm-hmm.
The have you had the hummus, like the jalapeno hummus, like the 3-layer hummus one? That one's so good. I love that one. What else did I like that I get from
Yeah, that's good.
It's pretty nice.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, huh?
See this misery spare.
You know, I read this anytime I want to go to sleep.
It's a great. How was your first night in the hospital?
I'm dying.
I was gonna come
I'm just tired.
on.
It took me forever to clean that room.
I was gonna come back last night, but then I got tired and fell asleep.
I swear I cleaned that room all. There was so much dust.
Yeah, welcome to the Pepper House, man.
I filled up the
Derek
vacuum.
knows a bit about Pepper House.
I filled up the vacuum 3 times, dog. That vacuum, I filled it up 3 times.
I believe it.
Like full.
The Dyson.
Yeah, just in dust.
You vacuumed for that whole house or what?
No, it's just that room.
Which one did you move into?
Tucker's old room.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to live in that.
At least you have it to yourself right now.
Oh no, it's nice. It was nice.
Yeah.
No, I slept fine for the little bit of hours that I got to sleep. But I'm just tired because of all day I'm sleeping.
I might just start crashing in that room with you because you go to bed early. Great.
No, you can cuddle with John, dude.
John goes to bed at like 11 o'clock. Sometimes.
It's not that bad, bro. It's not that bad.
It's
When you get the 7 a.m. class, you're like, oh.
okay, the funniest thing I've ever experienced in the Pepper House was when we had ground, when we were doing our ground classes, watching John try to wake up for ground class. He's like, I'm like, it's like 6:45. I'm leaving. And he's in bed and just like. I never saw a man happier than when ground school was over. So he's like, thank God I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. anymore.
Oh man. I love that kid.
It never fails. Make you smile. Shiver that man. It's hilarious.
Okay, good.
What's that? Some Skittles.
That's a show. This is my breakfast. Why is it only?
I'm basically. I have to go take my I'll have to go take my reg for AGI and then I'll come back and get my Skittles. So
Cool.
then you can't deny me. Rightful the rightful heir to the
Skittle throne.
Skittles.
Alright, you guys ready?
Aye, Captain.
Perfect.
Why did this guy stop eating Skittles?
Alright. Last time on IFR Ground class, we were talking about the altimeter. Find out today what happens. Alright. Skittles with coffee. Breakfast again.
It's interesting combination.
Tastes great.
Does
Oh. You guys know what I'm gonna ask. Does the VFSI have a diaphragm or an anaerobic wafer?
Diaphragm.
It has und diaphragm, yes. Okay, good. So, there's a diaphragm. And it also has a calibrated leak. I kind of draw that as like an offshoot from the main pipe, right? So the VSI 100% is the most confusing of all the pitot-static instruments, right? No one understands how the VSI works. I barely understand. It's a wizard. It's a word problem. No, I do kind of understand how it works. So the VSI, it's a lot easier to understand if we just think again about, right, the main concept here, that air is less dense at higher altitudes and then more dense at lower altitudes, right? Also, we know that the VSI allows us to read trends, right? It's kind of an interesting instrument in the sense that it tells you, okay, are you doing a 500 foot per minute descent, a 300 feet per minute descent rate, right? Is it vertical climb, where, right? In a traditional 6-fact display, right? Is the VSI, does it immediately tell you what you're doing?
No, there's a delay.
There's a delay. About how long is that delay?
Several seconds.
Nice answer. It's 6 to 9 seconds. It's about a 6 to 9 second delay, which in our plane, it's a little bit quicker because of the ADC and stuff, about 2 to 4 seconds. But it is still delayed, right? So I don't want to see you guys staring at your VSI when you're doing steep turns, right? Chad.
We're gonna meet.
So good. Okay, we understand that, right? Is the VSI connected to our RAM air at all?
No.
Correct. It's not. It's not connected to the RAM air at all. It only gets information from the static loop. Okay. Now, the thing is we have one path here that leads right to the diaphragm, and another little offshoot path that leads to the casing, right? So static air is both going into the diaphragm and it's going to the casing. Okay. So who here likes boba? I love boba. It's great, right? You know how like boba straws are really big, right? Do they need to be big enough to keep the boba? So you can kind of think of this one as like a boba straw, like a nice thick opening right to the diaphragm, versus this little offshoot here is kind of like a coffee straw, right? Like one of those, like, why do they even make them, right? It's barely a straw. You don't actually use it. It's kind of dumb, but it's a coffee straw where it's like this tiny, thin little straw, right? So obviously air is going to be restricted. It's still going to flow through that straw, but it's going to be a little bit restricted compared to the boba straw, right? That's going right to the diaphragm. So the way you think about this, right, is the diaphragm receives immediate information from the static air around the airplane. Okay, so if I climb or descend, the diaphragm will immediately respond to the amount of static air that's around the airplane. Versus the casing, because of that constricted airflow that we have with the calibrated leak, right, it's going to receive the same information but at a slower rate, right? So if the casing and the diaphragm aren't on the same page as one another, there's a difference of pressures now, right? And if there's a difference in pressure, that's what's read as either the feet per minute climb or descent, right? It's that difference in pressure between the diaphragm and the casing. So let's talk about this. So if I'm up here, sorry, static work. Let's say the airplane is up here. Okay. and I'm flying along, okay, and I descend down to here, okay. It's not definitely not as good as an airplane as the last one. And I descend down there, right? So I'm up here at 7,000 feet, and again I descend all the way down to 1,000 feet. So when I'm right, let's say I'm right here at 6,500, right? The airplane is actually right here at 6,500. What would be the pressure in the diaphragm? The static pressure in the diaphragm would be the pressure at 6,500, right? It's immediately receiving that information. But because the casing is delayed with the calibrated leak, the pressure in the casing is still what it would be at 7,000 feet, right? Because it hasn't caught up to the airplane yet. It's still at 7,000 feet. So you have a little bit of a difference of pressure here, okay? Does that kind of make sense? Right? So the casing is still, the pressure is still at 7,000, but I'm descending, I'm actually at 6,500, right? If the pressure in the casing is less dense than the pressure inside the diaphragm, what is the diaphragm going to do?
Expand.
It's going to expand, right? If the pressure in the casing is the same thing as the airspeed indicator, right? If the pressure in the casing is less dense, it's going to allow that diaphragm to just expand. If the diaphragm in the VSI expands, that's what's going to be read as that descent on the VSI. Okay. Now, after about 6 to 9 seconds, right, this guy starts catching up, right? But if we're still descending here, this spacing, almost, if you kind of visualize it, this difference in pressures is going to hold constant basically all the way down to our 1,000 feet here. But then eventually we level off. So once we level off, it allows the casing to kind of catch back up to what the altitude that we leveled off at. And eventually the pressures are the same, which would read as 0 on the VSI. Does that make sense? Kind of. Any questions, please? If there's anything that's not making sense here. Because it is hard to explain. But core concept here, right, is that the VSI, static pressure, enters the diaphragm, and it also enters the casing. It enters the casing at a delayed rate, right? Which means there's a difference of pressures. And those difference of pressures, when we're climbing or descending, is what's read as a feet per minute climb or descent, a constant feet per minute climb or descent. If it's a greater pressure difference, you're descending faster. If it's a smaller pressure difference, you're not descending as fast.
Question, do you know how the instantaneous VSIs work?
I don't. I would assume it's just the computer taking in the information and immediately doing it. But I don't know exactly how it works. If anything on this one, you on this check ride, you'd be asked just like a traditional VSI with anything.
So why is the VSI in the slings faster than like a Cessna?
It's because I think the air data computer that we have, it just is able to calculate that difference much quicker. Because this is all in a 172, it's all mechanical. I mean, there's no like nothing really crazy happening. But the air data computer is much more sensitive, and so it can probably just sense that difference in pressure a lot faster. It doesn't need as much of a gap to stabilize and be like, oh, it's this separate. Okay. So ASI, altimeter, VSI, 3 main pitot-static instruments. And then we have our static port here, and then we have our alternate static port, right? We don't have an alternate static port in our airplane because the static port isn't on the outside of the aircraft. So there's not really a reason it should get frozen over or anything, right? But let's talk about now what happens knowing we know if we lose something, right? So if we talk about the airspeed indicator, Remember, we have the entry and we have the drain hole, right? That air is flowing through. And you're getting a rating that's going to allow you to fly in the clouds. And if it's really cold, what can happen in a cloud when you fly through the cloud? If it's really cold outside, what might you get? Might get icing, right? Where is ice more likely to start forming first? It's the
Like,
the answer is it's more likely to form on like small protruding objects from the airplane first.
Oh.
And then as it gets more and more, then you'll start getting on the larger surfaces. But the small objects that are just kind of like sticking out, right? Like maybe like an antenna at the top of the antenna or something, might accumulate a little bit of ice before it spreads to the rest of the plane. So your pitot tube is a small protruding object, right? So it's very likely that you could get ice on it at some point when you're flying through a cloud. What are you supposed to do? What do we have that helps prevent that from happening before you fly through a cloud? What can you turn on?
You have pitot
We have pitot heat, right? So part of when you guys do start flying through clouds, part of your immediate process should be to, oh, I'm about to fly through a cumulus cloud or any type of cloud, throw that pitot heat on, just to help prevent the ice from forming, right? Pitot heat is anti-ice, not de-ice. We'll talk about that more later, but anti-ice is meant to stop ice from forming versus de-ice actually requires that the ice is formed and then it gets rid of it. It should kind of be like de-icing boots or something. But we'll talk about that later. So, okay, let's say I'm flying through the air, right? And I forgot to turn on my pitot heat, and then all of a sudden, this guy gets frozen over. Okay? Drain hole is still open, and you still have a static port. How is your airspeed indicator going to respond? We think logically about what.
altimeter, right?
What? So remember that the drain hole is open.
But it just shows 0.
Yes. Why?
Well, there's no ram air, so because it's comparing the, or yeah, I guess the static air would just press against the diaphragm like fully shut, because there would be no resistance against.
Right. So that's correct. I like to think about it even more simply than that, in the sense that like just there's no ram air, right? Because that got cut off. When it got cut off, there was probably some air that was trapped in the pitot tube, but because the pitot tube, the drain hole is open, right? That air just goes out the drain hole, right? So you just have no air entering the diaphragm. If you have no air entering the diaphragm, then it's just going to read 0, right? If you have, some people will say, if the drain hole is open, right, it's still technically you're getting static air through the drain hole, and you're also getting static air through the static port, which if it's the same, since it's reading dynamic pressure and there's no difference in pressure there, it's also just going to read 0. Both explanations are correct. But I just like, it makes sense for me to think like, okay, yeah, the air would go through the drain hole. You have no air entering the diaphragm, therefore it's just reading 0, right? So now let's say, do you have a question? Oh,
I was just thinking, if there's no ram air entering to the pitot tube, it might just end up acting like an what do you call it? The indicator or
the altimeter?
yeah,
So that's what we're gonna talk about now, right? Because that's why I like thinking about the air leaking out to the drain hole, right? Because if we fly that cloud and then all of a sudden both the entry and the drain hole get clogged, right? Now that air that's trapped in the pitot tube can't go anywhere, right? It's a closed system now. That closed system is very similar to the aneroid wafer, right? Meaning the air that's trapped inside that diaphragm can't go anywhere, which will allow it to just expand and contract with the change in static air. So that the answer to your guys' question, right, is it will act as an altimeter if both the entry and the drain hole are plugged. Right? It will only act as an altimeter if it's a closed system, and air can't escape. Right? Because that's exactly what's happening in the altimeter with the sealed Android wafer. Right? So now, let's say when I'm flying along and I'm having a really bad day, I'm also flying a plane where the static port's on the outside. All three are clogged. How's the airspeed indicator gonna behave? You're not getting any new static air, and you're not getting any ram air, and the ram air that you do have is trapped by the drain hole.
It'll freeze in the last position.
Correct. Right. It'll be frozen at a singular airspeed because it's not getting any new information at all. It's a fully closed system, and it's just going to read what it says. Right. So going through these errors are good, right? But on your check ride, the examiner is not going to say like, okay, what's going to happen if the ram air port is closed? Okay, what's going to, oh no, your ram air and your drain hole is closed. What's going to, right? Most likely, it's not going to do that. They're going to give you a scenario, and they're going to say, you're climbing out, right, and you're climbing, and you look at your airspeed indicator, and even though you're not changing your pitch at all, your airspeed is slowly continuing to climb. Right? You're not changing your pitch, you're not changing your power. As you're climbing out of the airport, you just climbed through a cloud layer. Your airspeed is climbing. What's happened?
Yeah, read the question, like what's the scenario again? Yeah. Why is it climbing? Are you climbing or what are you?
So let's say you just took off from an airport, right? And it's just a straight out departure, but you had to go through a cloud layer after you departed, right? And you're just maintaining a nice constant climb, so 80 knots or something, just climbing out in a straight line. And then all of a sudden you were holding 80 knots, and then coming out of the climb layer or the cloud layer, your airspeed is starting to slowly get higher and higher and higher and
I
higher.
think I know it. Is it the drain hole is blocked?
The drain hole and
Something else though. I was thinking just the drain hole.
well,
Be drain hole and ram air.
right.
Oh, they're both blocked?
They're both blocked, right? Because the airspeed, if the airspeed indicator is going up as you're climbing, what's it acting as? An altimeter, right? So see how much harder that is to think about than just being like, okay, yeah, this is like, I hate that little graph that says if this is clogged, this blah blah, because it doesn't explain, it doesn't give you a scenario in which that actually happens, right? Because that scenario, that's what's useful for us to think about, right? Because if that happened to me, I could diagnose it and say like, oh, I think my pitot tube is fully frozen over right now. Because I can see that I'm not doing anything, because the only thing that would make my airspeed climb, right? Like, or increase in airspeed would be if I pitched down and added power. If I'm not doing either of those things and my airspeed is just climbing on its own, okay, something's gone wrong, and it's probably that my pitot tube is fully frozen over, right? Does that kind of make sense? So let's talk about some other stuff. So if the ram hair hole and the drain hole are completely clogged, how's that going to affect my altimeter? It won't, right? Altimeter is going to work perfectly fine because the altimeter works only off of static air. Okay, but now let's say I'm flying through. Let's say I'm holding that same scenario, except your pitot tube doesn't get frozen over, right? You're climbing out of an airport. You go through that cloud layer, and you're keeping that climb. ATC tells you to climb all the way up to 7,500 or something. You're climbing, and eventually you notice that your altimeter needle just stops. You're like, oh, it's weird, because you can tell that you're still climbing, right? Your airspeed is still constant. You're holding your 80 knots. The VSI is, well, actually, the VSI would do something else. So but you're pretty sure you're still climbing, so what's happened? If the altimeter needle is completely frozen.
Diaphragm's busted.
It's busted.
There's no static air.
There's no static air, right? If you lose your static air, right? There's no new information entering the system, right? Meaning that is now the altimeter is now its own sealed system. Meaning that if the static air isn't changing, the aneroid wafer isn't going to move, right? It's just going to be stuck at whatever it was last stuck at, right? Cool. What would happen to the VSI in that circumstance? Same circumstance. You're climbing out, all of a sudden you see your altimeter, it's stuck at one point. It got stuck at 4,700, right? If you look at your VSI and what do you see?
It would also be stuck at 0.
What?
So it has no through the leak and the direct flow of static air, it's getting no new information. So
No
it's
new
also-
information.
Also sealed off.
And the calibrated leak, right? Eventually, that's going to allow the pressure to equalize between the diaphragm and the casing. If the pressure is equalized between the diaphragm and the casing and the VSI, it's just going to read 0 because there's no difference in pressure, right? So altimeter is stuck at one point. Eventually, after a couple seconds, the VSI equalizes and now it's reading 0, right? And that's because you lost your static flow and climb out. Okay. All right.
It's only you break so that air can get back in the system.
Yes.
That's one.
So the the least important instrument here is if like for instance if you had an alternate static port and you pulled the alternate static, that would fix the issue, right? But if for whatever reason your alternate static is also not working, you could break the VSI and that would allow air from inside the cabin to enter into the system and make the instruments work. Interestingly, also the VSI after you broke it would read the opposite direction, which is kind of funny. But
How does it affect the airspeed indicator if the static port is clogged?
if static port's clogged, okay, let's talk about it. So let's say we're flying along, right? And I'm climbing. Let's say I'm holding that constant rate climb again, right? I just took off from this airport, this godforsaken airport where everything goes wrong, right? I climb through that cloud layer and I'm holding a nice 80 foot per minute climb. Everything's looking normal. And then all of a sudden, as I'm climbing out, my airspeed, I was holding 80, but now it's slowly starting to decrease. It's getting lower and lower and lower. I look at the altimeter's stuck. And the VSI is now reading 0. So what's happened? We don't have static, right? Because we know from the altimeter and the VSI, right, that we don't have static. But why is the airspeed getting lower and lower and lower?
You're climbing?
You're climbing. And you're not changing your pitch, you're not changing your power.
Oh, is it because there's less air?
Right.
Well, less air in the air.
There is, yeah, exactly. There's less air in the air. We are climbing into less dense air. That's why I like to call the static air the reference air, right? Because it's referencing the density of the air around us. If we don't have that static air anymore, right? The airspeed indicator is dumb. It's just going to read that less dense air as less air entering the pitot tube. Therefore, oh, we must be going slower, right? So that line where it says, oh, it'll read low in a climb and high in a descent. That's what it means when it says low in a climb. Because as you climb into less dense air without static air, it's getting just less air is entering the pitot tube, meaning it thinks that you're going at a slower airspeed, but you might not be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's basically all the errors. If we did pull alternate static, how would that affect the readings of the instruments? Just wondering if you guys know this.
I feel like
There's gonna be a little bit of error, right?
Oh, I think the vertical speed indicator shows a climb, something like that.
Initially, yeah.
Initially, like the airspeed, something happens there, like,
If you pull alternate static and you're using alternate static, you expect that all of your instruments are going to read slightly high because of since it's pulling pressure from inside the cabin. I always get this wrong. Can't remember if it's high relative pressure, or low relative pressure inside the cabin of the aircraft, but either way,
I think it's lower relative pressure.
lower relative pressure.
Yeah.
Well, the difference in pressure from the outside the airplane versus inside the plane, the result of using that is that the instruments read slightly high. When you pull it, the VSI will initially read a little bit of a climb, and then the pressure is equalized, it goes back to 0. But your airspeed and your altimeter use slightly higher than it actually is. And like, yeah, if you pull draw to static and it's not for some reason, or there's blockage, then you could break the VSI in a traditional. Right. Now, the nice thing is with an air data computer, right? A lot of these are a lot less likely. I mean, it's not less likely, but if you get ICIs. But and you don't have a VSI to break. I don't know if you'd want to break your TCS. Does this all make sense? We spent a lot of time in the pitot-static system because it's like super important for later. I want each of you guys to be able to draw this out, right? And be able to talk through, okay, key concepts. Is the airspeed indicator a diaphragm or an aneroid wafer? Right? Big question there. What is dynamic air pressure? Right? Ram air plus static air. What causes the aneroid wafer and the altimeter to expand and contract? Right? These are just good questions that you want to know and understand for understanding other systems and stuff later. So
I have a question, do you think? Get a copy of
the slides.
that slide?
I think so. I think they put them like a Discord or something?
I don't know. I remember Corey sent me his slides that he made.
Hmm.
I think I have those somewhere. They're pretty much identical to the slings.
He made slides?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang. Better than me.
We didn't make them specifically for like my class. It's just he already had it.
Gotcha. I'll talk to let me ask Aaron, because I'm pretty sure they can you can send this, or like no, yeah, because Austin would always have the slides pulled up on his iPad during the class. So you do have access to the slides somehow.
I'm going to share them too, because Corey would do that. Corey would share some documents, like he would just send it to us.
Okay. I'll share at the end of the class. I'll share it with you.
yeah, they used to have it where you could just come up and then you could just put your email in there and share it with yourself. I don't know if that's still possible.
It probably is.
Hmm.
I just don't. I don't think these are like secret documents or anything. But
Not a lot.
you can only learn these in class. Vacuum system. Okay. We really need to clean the house. My wife says I need you to vacuum system. I wasn't even a joke. This is really bad. Cool. So traditional instruments, right? We have gyroscopes, which are operated off of the vacuum system, right? Like in a 172, right? You guys probably learned the vacuum system. So the three instruments that are typically run off the gyro are the attitude indicator, the heading indicator, and the turn coordinator. Okay? So, actually, guys, I have the best video to show you guys.
And simply, we work hard to keep things simple. And nature works even harder.
Gyroscopic instruments. The gyroscopic instruments include the attitude indicator, the heading indicator, and the turn coordinator. These are considered gyroscopic instruments because each one relies upon a gyroscope to function. They can either be driven by air suction or electricity. These instruments provide the pilot with such things as their pitch, bank, yaw, and heading. Before we get into each instrument, let's talk about what a gyroscope or gyro is and how it works. In its simplest form, a gyro is a heavily weighted spinning disc that is able to maintain its position and orientation. Gyros operate based on two principles: rigidity in space and precession. Rigidity in space refers to a gyro's ability to remain in a fixed.
So what he just said, that the gyros operate on two principles: rigidity in space, and precession. Very important. So, like, if someone asks you, like, okay, what are the principles that a gyro operates off of? That's the answer right there, right? So he's going to go into talking about it in just a little bit, right? Before that, he talked about how the gyros can either be electrically driven or they could be mechanically driven, right? Either electrical or mechanical. If it's mechanically driven, it means that as long as the engine is running, we have a engine-driven vacuum pump that's sucking air over the gyros, which is spinning them up, allowing them up to operate. Versus if it's electrically driven, it's an electric-driven pump that's doing the exact same thing, right? So,
Precession. Rigidity in space refers to a gyro's ability to remain in a fixed position in the plane in which it is spinning. By mounting the gyroscope on a set of gimbal rings, the gyro is able to rotate freely in any direction. Thus, if the gimbal ring rotates, the spinning gyro will remain in the same plane in which it was originally spinning. The other property of the gyro is known as precession. Precession is the tilting or turning of a gyro in response to a force. For instance, a small force is applied to the gyro whenever the airplane changes direction. However, instead of the gyro responding at the source of the force as expected, the result will instead occur 90 degrees ahead of that point in the direction of rotation. What this means to you is that sometimes the instruments may have some unwanted errors.
hold on a second. So he talked about rigidity in space. I cannot say that today. Rigidity in space, and precession, right? So if someone was going to ask you like, okay, what is rigidity in space? Can you explain that to me, right? Simplify it, right? I have a spinning top, and I spin it right here, and as long as it's spinning, it's maintaining that upright position, right? That's rigidity in space. That's a property of a gyro. As long as it's spinning, it's going to maintain that upright orientation, right? Versus precession. So this is, I believe, Newton's second law. This is a definition that you kind of just want to have memorized. A force applied to a gyro is felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of rotation. Okay? So what do we have in our airplane that kind of acts like a gyro when it's spinning, and you might feel it a little bit on the takeoff roll? Right. The prop is spinning, and as it's spinning, we're going to feel a little bit of the effects of the gyroscopic precession, right? So when I pitch up Okay, and I'm climbing away from the ground. Where is the force being applied when I pitch up? Like, let's just say the top or the bottom of the propeller.
It's in the bottom.
I think about it as like, if the propeller is neutral like this, so if let's say I'm viewing the propeller from the side, okay? If we're treating this as a gyro and I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm pitching up or down, where's the force being applied? I think of the force being applied at wherever the prop is jutting out. So let's say this is the airplane, right? This is the prop. I pitch up, okay? Now the bottom of the propeller blade is jutting out, right? Meaning that's where the force is being applied. Now, where is that force going to be felt? It's going to be felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of the rotation. Okay, so if the prop is rotating this way, actually, I could be rotating. Yeah, it'd be rotating this way. So, because it's rotating clockwise from the pilot's perspective, right? Now, it's like, can't bend my hand like that. Go up here. It's felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of rotation, so it's actually felt right here, which causes the plane to want to turn which direction as I pitch up. Plane wants to go. Wants to go.
I think it's felt to the right. I think it's felt to the right, and then that causes the left turning tendency because you're creating more lift on the right side. You know, like, isn't that a key factor?
So, kind of. So it's actually. So the thing about gyroscopic precession is it's actually a right turning tendency in a climb and a left turning tendency in descent. We just label it a left turning tendency, but because it does cause the airplane to turn. But in a climb, so if we're looking at the propeller head on, right? So imagine this is the center of the propeller, and then this is the kind of the angle that it's making, right? Or the circle that it's making. If the force is being applied right here, and the whole thing is rotating this way, okay, that means the force is being felt here. I'm looking at it, man, this is so hard because I'm looking at it this straight on. Let me take this section. Yeah, I think that's actually makes sense. Yeah, it does. So this is our propeller that we're viewing just from our seat, right? We're sitting behind the propeller. I pitch up, which means the force is being applied right here. It's felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of rotation, meaning that more thrust is being created on that side propeller blade. If the thrust is being created over here, is that going to turn the plane to the right or to the left?
Right.
It's going to turn to the right, right? So think about it this way. If that's the propeller right here, and this side is generating more thrust, it's going to turn the airplane like that. Does that make sense? So that's why gyroscopic precession is a right turning tendency in a climb because of that force that's being applied to the bottom of the propeller. Now in a descent, it's the opposite, right? If the force is being applied right here, felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of the rotation, so it's being felt right there, it's going to push it that direction, which then wants to pull you over to the left in the descent, right? Does that make sense? That's kind of like a review of that concept. But that is gyroscopic precession, right? So the gyros that are inside the instruments work exactly the same way. They apply a force at a certain spot, and that force, when it's applied at that spot, is felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of rotation, which then rotates an instrument. Okay. Almost done. I got 15 minutes here.
Which is a slow drifting, and minor is that some degrees ahead of that point in the direction of rotation. What this means to you is that sometimes the instruments may have some unwanted errors, such as a slow drifting and minor erroneous indications in the instruments. The good news is that all gyroscopic instruments have ways to either automatically or manually correct for this precession error. In order for gyroscopic instruments to work, the gyros have to spin at a very high speed. As previously stated, the instruments can either be powered by air or electricity. For safety reasons, different instruments are powered by different sources so that if one source fails, the other source will still work. The attitude and heading indicators are typically powered by air, and the turn coordinator powered by electricity. The spinning of the gyros with air is accomplished not by blowing, but sucking air around it. A vacuum pump connected to and powered by the engine draws filtered air from the cabin through the instruments, spinning the gyros, and then dumps out the air into the engine compartment. Let's look at some of the different instruments that use gyros. Attitude indicator. An attitude indicator is an instrument used to inform the pilot of the orientation or attitude of the aircraft relative to Earth. It indicates pitch, which is the fore and aft tilt, and bank or roll, which is the side-to-side tilt. Through the use of an artificial horizon and miniature airplane, the instrument depicts the position of the airplane in relation to the true horizon. This is especially useful when the natural horizon is obscured by clouds, the visibility is poor, or when flying at night. Along the outer rim are tick marks to indicate bank at the 0, 10, 20, 30, 60, and 90 degrees angles of bank. Degrees of pitch are located both above and below the artificial horizon in either 5 or 10 degree increments. At the top of the instrument is a small triangle that points to the correct bank angle the plane is in. The center of the miniature airplane lines up with the current pitch the plane is in. The gyro in this instrument spins around the vertical axis, meaning that the gyro rotates level with the horizon. The two gimbals holding the gyro allow the gyro to move freely and maintain its level orientation as the airplane maneuvers. Connections to the instrument face will then show the aircraft's attitude to the pilot. Note that if the airplane is experiencing an excessive pitch or bank, or if vacuum pump is not providing enough suction to spin the gyro, this instrument can read inaccurately. Heading indicator. The heading indicator senses the airplane's movement and displays heading based on a 360-degree azimuth in 5-degree increments. The tick marks are labeled every 30 degrees, with the final 0 omitted. For example, the number 6 indicates a heading of 60 degrees. 21 indicates a heading of 210 degrees. The heading indicator does not have any built-in heading sensing ability, so at the start of every flight, after the engine is running, the pilot must realign the instrument to correct heading, referencing the aircraft's magnetic compass. To accomplish this, push in the knob on the lower left side of the instrument. This both disconnects the gyro from the compass card and aligns the gear of the knob with the gears connected to the compass card. When complete, release the knob and the gyro will reconnect to the compass card. Unlike the attitude indicator, the heading indicator is orientated so that only the horizontal axis is used to drive the display. When the aircraft turns, the gyro and attached main drive gear remain in their original orientation. This then causes the main drive gear to rotate the compass card gear, which then rotates the compass card on the face of the instrument. Note that, due to friction and precession, the heading indicator may slowly drift away from the correct heading. Because of this, the pilot should double-check the accuracy of the instrument against the magnetic compass and realign as necessary. This should be done roughly every 15 minutes or so. Keep in mind, if the vacuum pump is not producing sufficient suction, when the engine is idling, the drift may be greater.
So key points. So I'll send this video to you guys so that you can watch it for studying. This is probably the best video going over the instruments in the vacuum system or gyroscopic instruments that I've found. But the key things that I pay attention to is, for instance, in the attitude indicator, right? The predominant principles that these instruments are operating off of, right? So the attitude indicator, right, maintains its rigidity in space, and then we pitch and roll basically around it. And as we pitch and roll around it, because of the gimbals, that's affected on the compass card, right? So it's working predominantly off of the principle of rigidity in space, right? Also knowing how the gyro is mounted. So the easiest way to remember this is that the attitude indicator is mounted horizontally, meaning the gyro is like this, right? And its way to remember that is, oh, it's mounted horizontally. It shows the horizon, right? That's an easy way to do that. Versus the heading indicator, right, predominantly works off the principle of precession, right? It's mounted vertically, And then as we turn, where we apply the force, it rotates, and through a series of gears, then rotates the card on the front of the heading indicator, right? So, I don't know if we have enough time to go through the rest of the video. But I'll send it to you guys so you guys can watch it. The last instrument that we have is a turn coordinator. Turn coordinator is electrically driven, not air driven, for redundancy, right? You'll hear redundancy a lot, obviously. And the only difference between this guy and the heading indicator is that the gyro is actually canted 30 degrees, right? And it's canted 30 degrees because that's what allows it to read both rate of turn and rate of roll. The older turn coordinator, the slip and skid indicator, the gyro was not canted at all. So it just read rate of turn, but it did not read rate of roll. So why canting at 30 degrees allows you to read rate of turn and rate of roll, I don't exactly know, but I know that that's what it does. And those are the gyro instruments, gyroscopic instruments. So what did we? I think they just have the next things are the magnetic compass and then the errors and stuff associated with it. So we'll go through that tomorrow. Good. Any questions on anything? We're staying awake barely. Alrighty. All right, gents, there you go. Congratulations, you completed day 2 of Michael's IFR Ground. It was riveting. I know.
Consider being riveted.